What's good, everyone, and welcome back to another reaction video. Today we are reacting to Game Theory. Was FNAF's final mystery really that simple? This is basically the video I did last Thursday where we were doing this whole reaction to a YouTuber solving the mystery of FNAF, the biggest one, that is, the crying child's real name, which he deduced that the name was Dave by using the questions within the book referencing from Cassidy talking to the crying child just to get the answer. And yeah, that is something I didn't really expect to really hear about. And even after, like, seeing it, hearing it, listening through the progress of it, going into detail on what Hyper Droid did to solve this mystery, did I ever expect this to be the result? Like, at all. Like, I expected never to really get the crying child's real name, and thought we were all gonna call him Evan for the rest of like the whole story. But even though that would be the case, I didn't really was gonna be fully on board with it, because the only person that can confirm or deny this one truth is Scott Coffin. And considering I haven't heard people going like, "Oh my gosh, it's true, it's correct," Scott actually gave out information saying that this person was right. And well, I haven't really seen that, but I haven't heard it either, so yeah. And I guess now we're gonna go into the theory of, is this theory correct? And not only that, was it so simple to get this answer? Because along with Droid's explanation on the crying child's name, he concluded that the tally marks are like the biggest hint to solving the mystery. And that was the case that if you follow the tally marks and listen, well, actually just go into detail on where they're located and all this and all that, it would give you the clues and answers that you need to do to solve this mystery, to figure out the crying child's, but also Cassidy's real name. Like, if that's the case, then we were all like overthinking this whole thing, and the answer was so simple that we just all overlooked it. And if that's the case, well, geez, uh we really did overlook it, and that's like crazy to me, because wow, we overlooked the biggest piece of information. So today we are going to see if this is the case, and not like how some other people have been guessing, estimating all these different details, clues, and all that. But considering the fact that the method that was used to get the crying child's name seems pretty legit, is like something I can't deny fully. But again, I can't really confirm or deny this, since there's only one person that can really do this, and that is Scott Coffin himself. So until I see or hear anything about him saying that this is the correct like answer to the crying child's name, then yeah, that's gonna be a bit of a wait. So I hope you all enjoyed this reaction video. If you did, hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. Hit the notification button to be notified immediately when your video comes out. If you have any videos you'd like to recommend, put it down in the comment section below, and I'll react to it as soon as possible. And the link to this video will be down in the description below. So with all this said, let's start this video, shall we? So let's see what we got here.
After 9 years and countless theories, the crying child's name has been found. That's right, on screen right now is the real name of FNAF 4's crying child. And by the end of this episode, you're gonna know exactly which one it is. Hello, Internet.
Okay, I need to look at that like thing for a second. Okay, we got Benjamin, Luke, Alex, Gregory, Silas, Cooper, Caleb. Oh my gosh, that's a ton of names. Okay, there it is, Dave. Dave.
So
Yep.
you're gonna know exactly which one it is. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's just desperately trying to keep up with the FNAF content train. It feels like there's been a lot, right? We had all that stuff from the 10th anniversary, we've had our first full entry into the Choose Your Own Adventure style book series, there's even a FNAF level in the new Funko Fusion game. I swear, if there is lore in this thing, I am going to scream. But while I was busy just trying
Funko made a game with Funko figures of... Okay.
to keep on top of all of that, someone else decided that it would be fun to add one final slice to my already oversized mountain of lore pizza. Fellow theorist and friend of the channel, Hyperdroid. Now, normally another theorist posting a theory of their own doesn't particularly slow me down. I'd normally finish writing what I'm doing and then I'd go back and watch that later. But this one was different because he claimed he'd done the impossible. He claimed that after years of speculation, he'd finally found the name of the crying child. That is a massive claim, especially when so many others had tried and failed in the past. But it wasn't all talk. He backed it up with some pretty solid evidence that the fanbase seemed to love. We were inundated with messages on our subreddit, Twitter, YouTube comments, all asking us one thing. Is he right? And I get it. Hyperdroid is a fantastic theorist, but this particular puzzle has eluded us for so long, to the point where most of us just thought it would never be solved. If he is right, and we're all gonna start calling the crying child something other than the crying child, we wanna make sure it stands up to scrutiny. Don't wanna be caught backing the wrong animatronic horse. So let's go through the evidence he's presented, the methods he's used, and see whether this new name holds water.
Yep. There it is. That is the case. Oh, this is a big one. Even I was shocked about it, and I can't really refute it, because, it is some solid evidence, and it actually fits together with all the other pieces that go with it. Like, it is so well put, and actually has everything connected, that it just seems so true, yet I'm terrified of the fact that this isn't the correct answer. I mean, think about it. We've been, like, this long without knowing the crying child's real name, and the only thing we had as an answer was the name Evan, and that was only due to the books giving us a name involving a kid that had a similar relationship between the crying child and William Afton. And this is, even now I'm still second guessing it, because even though the name sounds so right, and with all these pieces of evidence being put to prove that it's right, it's just a terrifying thought of, this isn't the name that Scott wanted us to know. I mean, Scott wanted us to think was the correct one, when in actuality, it isn't. And that's a terrifying thought, because... Ugh.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's, can't use Morty anymore, can we? And doesn't look like Matt's gonna be interrupting me this time. Gotta come up with something new. Oh, I know!
Leave your theories in the comments below. I'll pick my favorite in the next episode of Trash.
Yeah, that's about right. I guess that's what happens when I let Yossi pick the acronym. Let's give it
Tom review. Okay. Hypothesis. Okay,
trash take
fair.
then, shall we? To understand how Hyperdroid came to find this new name, we first need to recap where the mystery started. The survival logbook. After the release of FNAF 6, we got this book that seemed to just be a kid's puzzle book, but it turned out to be one of the biggest lore clues in the entire series. And I really do mean that. Inside, we have 3 characters talking to us. Mike Afton writing in red pen, a ghostly spirit writing in faded text, and a final spirit altering the physical text of the book. Across several pages, the faded text wrote the words, "my name," and on one page, my name was written on a gravestone. This reflected the 5th gravestone with no name that we found at the end of FNAF 6. Thanks to Reddit user DPowerful1, we realized that you could take the altered numbers on the pages where the words "my name" were found and use those as coordinates for the word search, giving us the name Cassidy, the 5th missing child. This in and of itself was a huge dub for the FNAF community, but it was kind of bittersweet. Because there was another puzzle in this book that remained unsolved, the Foxy Grid. This grid had faded letters in the first few boxes, showing us that we needed to fill in the rest, and likely meaning we needed more coordinates to figure out a new name. The name of the spirit writing in altered text in the book. Based on Cassidy's questions about the purple plastic telephone, psychic friend Fredbear, as well as a birthday party that was for you, all things seem to be pointing to this final spirit being FNAF 4's crying child. The Foxy Grid was going to finally help us figure out the name of this character.
Until everything just went to literal F because no one could figure out the Foxy puzzle. Because they were trying to figure out what type of puzzle it was, what kind of code system it was, and all these other things. Like, compared to now, there was like so many different thoughts and methods on how to get it right, and a lot of it didn't really work well. And now we're years later, and we have this to solve it. So, we have went from chaos to desperately trying to make one whole method that everyone has figured out to work. Like, it's a solid method that everyone could agree on was gonna be the answer to figure out this child's name, but no one could figure it out. It is chaos when you think about it.
The problem was, nobody could solve it. Matt was literally ripping his hair out for years over this thing. Some people tried to find the name in other places and then reverse engineer a solution. In Help Wanted, the FNAF 4 bedroom was called Norman Bedroom, so maybe Norman? Some people thought Garrett because that's Mike's brother in the recent movie. Some even thought it might be Gregory because he's designed in a similar way to the crying child. But none of them were able to link it back to the Foxy Grid, and so it just felt inconclusive.
Norman doesn't really sound like a solid name. It could be a code for normal bedroom, or like, hey, this is the norm room, and that kind of stuff. It wasn't going to be Garrett. Wouldn't make sense. That's a totally different alternate universe version of the crying child. And as much as people like to disprove this theory, people still believe Gregory's like a robot child, so yeah. And Gregory has been very adamant saying that this is his actual name, and Cassie confirms that, well, at least to a degree, because they might have just met before Gregory was going the whole thing in security breach or something like that. And either way, that would be a complete messy thing, I think, but then again, probably not. Think about it, it's a headache by itself. But yeah, people believe that Gregory was just modeled as a robot to be looking like the crying child, but yeah, you know it. You know
Reddit users found the phrase, "is Springtrap," using 6 Cassidy coordinates and 6 My Name page numbers. This seemed to pair nicely with My Name because it matched the FNAF 3 teaser. My name is Springtrap, and implied therefore that the ghostly text was actually Afton speaking to the crying child, whose name would therefore be Cassidy. But sadly, this solution ignores the 7th coordinate needed to make up the name Cassidy in the first place. And so by cherry-picking 6 of the coordinates, it kinda causes the whole thing to fall apart. Finally, the most simple and well-known of the theories was offered by Reddit user Wolfie1740 Kingdom. They matched the questions that Cassidy was asking to the answers given by the crying child in altered text. The party was for you. It was for me. What do you see? I can't see. Does he still talk to you? I can hear sounds. This gave them the letters E, V, and A. But they weren't really able to figure out the final letter. Another Reddit user, Godzilla813105, did manage to find a solution. They added up the tally marks to give them the final coordinates 39, leading to the letter N and the name Evan. A lot of people really liked this name and thought it was an interesting theory, but because you had to break the method on that final letter, it was just too tough a moondrop to swallow. Enter Hyperdroid. He too liked the initial method posed by Wolfie, but he agreed that the final letter would need to follow the same method, especially as Crying Child does offer a 4th answer. I'm scared. So he took the same 3 answers to get the letters E, V, and A, but rather than skipping the 4th answer, he tried to match it to another one of the questions. On page 41, Cassidy asks, "Do you have dreams?" Initially, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense given the response, chance. But underneath that question, Mike has drawn a picture of Nightmare. The Nightmare animatronics came from William's experiments on his kids, and it's been theorized that this is what was used to make the crying child scared of the animatronics in FNAF 4. That means the crying child would not only know what this is, but would also be afraid of it, leading to him giving the seemingly non-direct answer, "I'm scared." Taking the page number for that question, you can plug it into the Foxy grid and get the letter D, spelling evad. Then, noticing all the references the book had to reflecting, along with the random mirror next to the word search that's never been used for anything, Hyperdroid reflected the answer, giving them the crying child's name. D-A-V-E. Dave. Everybody lost their frontal lobes over this. But Hyperdroid wasn't done. Not only did he offer the initial solution, he also went classic game theory on all of us and used some real-world evidence. He calls out that Dave, or more accurately the full name David, was the 3rd to 5th most popular baby name for boys between 1970 and 1980, around the time that he would have been born.
You know, it's a weird thing to really think about. The most popular names back in history. Like, that would mean that every name that was given around those time periods was usually a name that was somewhat popular, probably like top 100. And if you want a really unique name, you would have to go and like find like a name that's like hardly is ever used. Like if I use my real name, it is a very popular name and a very common one, to be honest. And it's just surprising to actually think about it, because that would mean that, well, almost everyone that I know that has a name similar to mine just had like people thinking one way or another to have a really familiar name and whatnot, and that's like crazy to really think about.
I love the fact he did this. Real-world evidence is so useful for theory crafting. It can give you insight into things that the games or books might otherwise not. And given how important this name is, I wouldn't be surprised if Scott had actually done some real-world research himself into the name. And what's more, I think we can actually expand upon Hyperdroid's idea here by getting a little more specific. So, let's give it a go. FNAF is commonly depicted as taking place in Hurricane, Utah. According to the United States Social Security Administration, between 1970 and 1980, David switched positions a few times, occupying either the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd, or the 1st most popular spots, higher than what Hyperdroid presented. So we're off to a pretty good start. Although, there is one detail about the Aftons that we never really talk about that could change all of this. Ludwig actually mentioned it when he binged all of the FNAF lore with Matt on stream.
Matt, why are they British? Why are they British? The kids are raised in like Utah and they sound British.
When the Aftons speak, they sound British. Likely somewhere from England based on the accents. I'd like to say it's nice to have some British representation in video games, but I'm not really sure this is the one I'd want to claim. Anyway, this detail could throw a spanner into the works, as the
Oh, that's... wow. I actually forgot about that detail. Huh. To really think about it, they are British. Maybe on William's half, at least. Because, again, we don't know who his wife is, what she's like, what she sounds like even. The closest representation that we have is Ballora, but that's really it. So, yeah, that's a bit of a rough one. But I don't know really any British common names. Like, is David like a common name in Britain? Unless there's like other names for Dave. Like, I don't know. But yeah, with the British thought coming in, maybe it was Mrs. Afton that made the name.
there's a chance that William named his kids based on what was popular back home rather than where they lived now. So, was David still a popular name in the UK? Thankfully, the answer is abso-freaking-lutely. More so than in America, actually. According to the Office of National Statistics, David was the most popular name for boys in England from 1954 to 1974. After that, between 1974 and 1994, it only dropped down to number 3. So still, this is looking like a pretty solid piece of evidence, right?
You mean they did this research for nothing? Like, I literally looked into it right this second. F
Plus,
me
you can
that.
actually take it a step further. Wanna guess what other name was in the top 10 baby boy names during the 70s?
Michael?
In the UK, Michael was the
Hmm.
9th most popular name for a boy, and in Utah, it was literally the #1 name every year in the 70s, except 1973, where it was overtaken by Jason. Of course, Jason had to ruin the perfect streak. Hashtag blame Jason, am I right? Regardless, again, this seems to be lining up pretty well. But what about the final Afton child, Elizabeth? Well, she is also on these lists, although she's nowhere near as popular. In the UK for that time, she was sitting between 20th and 25th most popular name. And in Utah, it's similar, anywhere between 19th to 24th. That's not really as high as I'd like for it to feel like a solid connection. It isn't super bad. It would be way worse if the names were like 50th or 100th most popular, you know? But if this is being used as evidence for how Scott picked his names, then Elizabeth would likely need to follow that same pattern. And in reality, she'd have then ended up being called something like Sarah or Jennifer, both #1 names for the time period in the UK and Utah respectively. Therefore, while David was a really popular name between the 1970s and 80s, it kind of feels like a weaker connection. Maybe Scott just thought Elizabeth sounded more British because that was the Queen at the time. Who knows? No need to worry though, because
I mean, that is kind of true when you think about it. Well, while Michael and Dave or David is like a very popular name, now that we figured that bit out, Elizabeth technically would be one if the Queen wasn't named Elizabeth at the time period. Because, let's be honest, some people might be afraid to use certain names because it might feel offensive to those in power, so that might be the case here. Like, it's not meant to be like, oh, we're terrified of this person or anything like that, or offense. It's just like, you don't really want to offend someone by using a certain name by accident. Like, I had to take a script writing class, and someone got offended because I just looked up online what are some common names for this one gender, and bam, I picked it. They got annoyed because I was using their name. Not like I knew what their name was. It was like beginning of the year kind of thing. And bam, they got really annoyed and actually demanded that I actually changed the name. And they kept bugging me about it. So I basically was forced to do it so I could just get them off my back. So yeah, if it's anything like that, then yeah, that might be the very case scenario that's going on here.
that wasn't the only real-world evidence Hyperdroid used. He also mentioned the meaning of the name David. While it was a popular name in both the UK and the US, it's actually of Hebrew origin, meaning beloved. Fun fact, Thomas also comes from a Hebrew word that means twin. I'm not a twin, at least as far as I know. Maybe you could let me know down in the comments if you think you found my long-lost twin. For this theory, though, Hyperdroid claims that the meaning does make sense. He connects the meaning of beloved to the crying child's brother Mike, and how his whole character arc is caused by killing his brother, showing us that his brother Dave was beloved by him. This is where I have to press X to doubt. While, yes, Michael does say sorry to his brother by the end of FNAF 4, the rest of his actions don't really say that he considered his brother beloved. He jump scares him, he actively puts him into an animatronic, he doesn't seem to care about him at all. After that, his actions seem to be spurred on more by his father. Afton sent him down into Sister Location, where he then learnt about Elizabeth and the monster his father was, and so went on a quest to destroy him. Some of that may have come from the guilt of killing his brother, but I'm just not convinced enough to say that Michael considered his brother beloved. Now, that doesn't mean that I think the meaning David being beloved is invalid evidence at all. He may not have been beloved by Michael, but he was beloved by someone else, William. William didn't want his little boy gone. He didn't want him to die. He needed to save him. I will put you back together. We've also believed for a long while that he killed Charlie in a drunken or emotional rage after the death of his own son. That wouldn't happen if he didn't care about his kid, if his son wasn't beloved. And by associating that meaning with Afton, other pieces fall into place for the other Afton kids as well. Michael once again comes from the Hebrew language, and it means who is like God. Typically, this is meant as a rhetorical question because there is no one like God, but it could also be interpreted as a statement. Michael, who is like God. William is a man who has figured out power over life and death in this world. He sees himself as a god. And Mike tells us himself that the Funtime animatronics confuse him for his father.
They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
He is like his father. He is who is like God. The same thing goes for the name Elizabeth. It's derived from the Hebrew name Elisheva and means my God is a promise. One of the only lines we get from Elizabeth before she becomes baby is her begging William to let her play with baby.
Oh, Daddy, let me go to her. Didn't you make her just for me?
Baby was made by Afton for Elizabeth. She's annoyed because she is now being denied the thing made specifically for her. The thing that was promised to her by her father, by the god of this world. After that, she disobeyed and got scooped. And so Afton made her another promise, the same one he made the crying child. He sent Michael down into the bunker to put her back together. 3 Afton kids, 3 Hebrew names, 3 meanings that all point back towards dear old dad. It's like poetry.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Interestingly, William isn't of Hebrew origin, it's actually Germanic, but it also has an interesting meaning. Resolute protector or strong-willed warrior. He tried to protect Elizabeth. He was resolute in fixing and protecting the crying child after he died. And if you don't call surviving a spring-locking strong-willed, I don't know what else you'd call it. So, from a thematic standpoint, the...
Because that one's a bit iffy. Like, Scraptrap could be non-canon, and that's like a little disheartening to realize that he didn't survive a fire again and kept his promise of I always come back. But yeah, I'm calling maybe an iffy there. Just doesn't feel right in a way. But yeah, those things does kind of fit him when you put it that way.
Name Dave does seem to work. Its meaning fits what we know of the character, and it ties into the same themes as the rest of the Afton family. It's at this point, though, I should probably address the Orville in the room. Real-world research is great, and strong connecting themes are fantastic pieces of supplementary evidence. But that's the point. They're supplementary. If the core evidence isn't there to back it up in the first place, then it don't mean squat. It all comes down to the actual method that Hyperdroid used to solve this puzzle. And I'll be honest, when I first saw it, I was a little unsure. Using the faded text of "the party was for you" and "what do you see" make complete sense for the answers "it was for me" and "I can't see." I Can Hear Sounds technically works with "does he still talk to you?" though it's not the cleanest, but I'm scared being a response to "do you have dreams" does feel like a bit of a stretch. The line only works because of the nightmare drawing on the same page, even though none of the other questions need context clues from the page. This feeling was also exacerbated when Hyperdroid pointed back to a Reddit post by the user Ecstatic Marzipan 7 from the GT subreddit. They came up with a solution 3 years ago, so way to represent the GT community. But when I took a look at the original post, they were receiving similar pushback. People were commenting the same things that I'm saying now. However, we theorists are nothing if not thorough. We always dot our I's and cross our T's. Rather than just say, this answer feels wrong and throwing the whole thing out, I wanted to go back through the logbook and do a bit of my own reverse engineering. I marked down every page number where Cassidy wrote something in the logbook. I then used those page numbers in the Foxy grid to find all the possible letters we could get to see if any of them gave us usable answers that we could then go back and pair with I'm scared. 2 of them got ruled out immediately. What do you remember and do you miss them? Because they're on pages 20 and 70. You can't go 0 down on a grid, so they're out. On page 56 we get what's your favourite ride the carousel, but that spells Vave, so that's out too. 3 of Cassidy's questions do give us letters that technically work. Do you remember your name is on page 31. Do any of these toys look familiar to you is on page 42. And did one of these belong to you is on page 43. 31 gives us a C, 42 gives us a W, and 43 gives us a P. Using these letters you can spell cave, wave, and pave. All real words, but not exactly names, especially considering the very...
that just doesn't make sense. Those sounds like places, kind of events, and things. So it honestly doesn't work in this case scenario. And now I am a bit sad because Dave isn't the real name anymore. It's more of something else, I guess. So I guess that's a bit disheartening, but Yeah, it makes sense, I guess.
Normal Mike and Elizabeth. Although, page 43 isn't actually labelled as 43. It's one of the altered page numbers, and it shows 15. So I tried that too, and it gave me Yave, another dud. The only time I got close to another answer was by using page 23, which ironically gives you an N spelling Evan. Was Wolfie actually right all those years ago? Yeah, no. If you thought Do You Have Dreams made no sense with I'm Scared, I feel like was your favourite childhood toy a plastic telephone is an even worse answer. It would then mean we haven't reversed anything either, and so the mirror in the middle of the book would also remain unused, which isn't really ideal. The last page to try was 83, where Cassidy asks, is this song familiar to you? This gives you a T in the Foxy grid, and I tried using this as both an alternative for I'm Scared as well as I Can Hear Sounds, just to be sure, but no combination of those letters made a name either, which means by process of elimination, Do You Have Dreams does kinda have to be the answer. If it's not, we'd also have to throw out the letters E, V, and A too, because we need to find an entirely new method to solve this grid. And at this point, I kind of feel like if there was another method, someone surely would have found it by now. I'm sure that some people still aren't going to be happy with this solution. For all the other questions, Crying Child was just responding to the words Cassidy said. But for this final one, you have to use Mike's drawing to get the full interpretation. As I've already said, that kind of breaks the method. Not as much as finding the N for Evan using the tally marks did, but enough that it doesn't feel satisfying. Except when you stop and look back, Scott actually did the same thing with the Cassidy puzzle. Think about it. At the start, we were using altered page numbers from pages with my name written on them. But as the puzzle went on, that changed. Suddenly, we stopped using altered page numbers and began using other altered numbers from the page, like 7 and 2 or 10 and 11. On some pages, we're not even using altered numbers. One of them, we use numbers written by Mike, a completely different character. And on another, you have to follow Mike's clue to a different page and then use the numbers that are just in the book. They're not altered, they're not written down, they're just there. We were still following the my name part of the puzzle, but the actual number used for the coordinates was different. That rule was being broken. And yet, no one really batted an eyelid when that was pitched out. Why? Because we got an answer that made sense. Yes, the method was a little messy, but clearly it was the correct solution that Scott had planned, given he then went on to confirm the name Cassidy in his cancelled movie ideas. To me, this is the same situation. We finally have an answer that spells a name and follows the same kind of puzzles, even if the method is a little messy.
Maybe it isn't that. Maybe we're thinking of it like a totally different way. What happens if the case scenario is to get the true answer? Mike had to give a helping hand to both Cassidy and the crying child, who I guess we're gonna call Dave now. But anyway, to the main point, what if they actually had Mike's help in trying to get the last answer? And that would be to give the final piece of information to get their whole name. Like, you couldn't get Cassidy's full name without one thing that Mike did, well, a couple things, without Mike's assistance in giving some certain context clues and all that. It wouldn't make sense, but yet, what if that was the case? What happens if it's like, manipulation? Like, they have Mike manipulated to do one thing, like in the movie, in the dreamscape. Like, Mike was passed out for a bit, or even a second, or maybe in between, or even before the shift even began. And he just gave his assistance at certain points within the book, not because he wanted to, but because Cassidy and Evan needed help to answer the other's question. I don't know, it could be a thing like that. And there have been weirder stuffs within the whole series, so yeah, it could work.
Maybe Scott wanted to make the puzzles harder as they went on. Or, maybe he just isn't that good at planning puzzles to begin with. We theorists are so used to complex ciphers and ARGs that sometimes I think we expect everything we solve to be on that level. But in actuality, not everyone is. And so the simplest solutions can actually be the best. All that being said, what do I actually think? Is Dave the real name of the crying child? Well, even though a little messy, the solution does fit. It gives an answer for the random mirror in the middle of the book, and it works thematically with all of the Afton children and their parts in the story. Is Crying Child's name Dave? For me, after spending days going back and forth, looking at every side of the argument, I have to say that the answer is a resounding yes. I believe that Dave is the name of the crying child. So to Hyperdroid, Ecstatic Marzipan 7, and any other FNAF theorist that came up with this solution over the years, congratulations, you did it. You solved the Foxy Grid, and you got the theorist seal of approval. Editor, cue the applause! So nice to give one of these out, especially to people like Ecstatic Marzipan 7, who solved this thing over 3 years ago. It's a helpful reminder that there are some fantastic theorists out there. We just need to be open to hearing them out. Whether they're a tiny channel here on YouTube, a small post on a subreddit with only 2 upvotes, or a random reply on a Discord server, they can have ideas that are just as good as any one of us bigger channels. It may go against our own personal headcanons, but if this experience has taught us anything, it's not to discount those ideas just because they're a little out there. Give them a chance. Who knows? They might actually have the solutions we've all been looking for. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching. And if you're looking for more FNAF theory reviews, just Bite of 83 the video on screen to watch our reaction to Dual Process Theory's theory. Review away, theorists.
Yeah, I can admit that in the end, this was a bit of a messy theory, but it's not at all a bad theory, if you think about it that way. Because, as hard as it might be, this probably is the closest and the most absolutely most possible answer on trying to get the crying child's name. And do I mean any harm when I say this? No, because every other method has been used when it came to this book. And if one method seems like it's gonna work and shows the most progress out of everything that was ever used so far, and there's like no other secret method or like new method that Scott has made and kept hidden but also was able to be found by us, then yeah, something's gotta be up, at least in personal opinion. But yeah, Dave. No matter how much I want to say otherwise, it sounds like a legitimate answer. Because everything honestly fits. Everything works. It follows the same method that we use for Cassidy. Like, it uses the same method to find every single letter. Just like Cassidy's name. Is there a bit of help from Mike here and there? Yeah. But maybe that's intentional because that was the only way to get the communication going full circle. To figure out who's who, and to figure out how to answer and give the clue on what their names are going to be, thanks to a little help from Mike. Whether it would be by his choice or by some small level of manipulation. Because I believe the small manipulation thing is part of the answer on why Mike is helping here and there, or why Mike is giving an answer to these certain parts. At least that's what I think in certain opinion. But yes, this said, I think this might be the answer that we have been looking for so long, and I'm hoping this is going to be the case, because I don't know what to do if it isn't. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button down below. Hit the subscribe button to support the channel, support the content provided, and so on and so forth. Hit the notification button, be notified immediately when a video comes out. And just tell me what you think about this theory in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the name Dave that's been used here. Do you think it's going to be the real name of the crying child? Because to me, in all honesty, until Scott gives like a total yes, a total no to the name, we're going to call this kid Dave. That is literally how it's gonna go. Furthermore, I don't recall if I ever did say it, but the link to this video will be down again in the description below. So again, be sure to give Game Theory some love and support for the video they made. And now with this all said, I hope you all enjoy, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!